My name is Ben Clothier. And for those who are not familiar with me, I am deaf, and the voice you hear is a woman interpreter transliterating for me. And anything you don't quite understand or want to interrupt, that's fine. I will clarify. I want to make sure everyone gets what I am presenting this evening. And we'll have a discussion, configure. And 2 or 3 years ago, I was a servicer team, and we had new publicity, added new segments of this subject. So we'll tend to evaluate the technical accessibility of these applications through always configure. So always configure, we know, is a new technical term. So ever since we've started this, and for a long time, the SQL servicer was involved. So one problem is that if I have access to SQL, then maybe I could show the accessibility for the configure. Then there is no data that is hidden there, but that was a greater problem for the people who want to put their confidential data in the iCloud. And then, so that means we need to trust them, the people who are running the iCloud, the people who can't see, to join our confidential data. So we were thinking that over on how to resolve this problem. And we use always configure. Always configure means that we have kept the configure into the machine, into the server. So that means we have the admin server. We can open that server, but the configure we couldn't quite get. It was the key was there, and so that in the person who is manipulating or changing this information, the configure, the always configure, there was one nice thing about always configure, and it is the support that we have in ODBC. And it's possible that we can do anything with that, with the connection. What was it? But we're going to show. I'm going to show you or demonstrate to you, and during this meeting, what we make the new database on my Surface machine. And so I'll show that to you as we configure the parameters. It's encrypted, so okay, thank you. But so we're going to read that, and I'm going to show the data during this presentation. Thank you. So parameters are going to, with a new database. Right now, well, we have an empty or vacant database, and I will be showing what I'm talking about here. I'm going to make very simple graph for you. It's not going to be enough to demonstrate, but okay, so that makes the graph really simple. We name the person in their SSN with the Social Security number, and then I always sit back and say, oh, wait a minute. We tend to give too much information. We tell the BSS, or we will be looking over the encryption is only the plain text. Obviously, it's just plain text, and we don't have any password or anything new to add technically. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
As you can see here, what do we do next? We're going to use the encrypted information to show 2 days. I'll show you those. Let me show you that on this demonstration. Under protection, under properties, excuse me, always encrypted. You'll see 2 files. One is the master key and one is the encrypted key. Now, under the master key, it does not save per person. It only takes the information from the saved area, whereas encrypted key, you can add it to the server. Excuse me. So try to think of this as if you were talking about a nuclear launch. Before the rockets are launched, those keys have to be turned simultaneously. You can see that these have to be done by 2 individuals, so one person can never be in charge of all of the data. That's the idea. Under the master key, you'll see wizard. That's a wizard help. That's actually doing all of the processing that's going on. Now, you see you have some options here that you can save under master key, or under our keys here. You'll see 4, but in reality it's really 3. You can use one to Azure portal, the Windows operating, as well as the certificate for SQL or any other private communications that you may want to have. That's the same technology that you see in other places, but certificate is then moved onto our server, and you can use that certificate under that is encrypted. That can then be undone, and so that you can see under Azure portal. Excuse me. This is slightly new technology, but one of the really cool ideas behind that is in our testing, we've run into a few frustrations that it's not working very well. In this demonstration, I'm going to use the Windows certificate only. If there's any time left, we can speak a little bit further about those other key issues. And then that last option that I was referring to, create our own. And this is pretty complex. We're not going to include that in this particular issue or topic right now. It's a possibility to create your own key so that you can save information, but right now I'm going to go ahead and use the Windows certificate. I can make a test of this certificate if I wanted to evaluate that, and I would call that a supervisory key if I wanted. All right, so we have that supervisory key, and we've made the encrypted one itself. You can see here. under that, you can see that the encrypt key is dependent upon the supervisory key. And so these two keys, they're ready to go. We could use a right click here. You can pull on that particular column. And you can see here you have other options, one of which is the encryption. Now these are only available just recently. SSMS. So suppose you use an old, like 2016 version or something like that. That is not an option at that time. So we see that we click here. Because we've already made an encrypted column, we can find it there. We find that it's better not to give it some kind of long created name or my own key first, my master key, then wait until that is later given a name to be selected. These options are determinants. The first one is determinants, and the second one is randomized. Under the determinant, you see the encryption is pretty standard. It's done the standard way. There's a word, Apple, and then it kind of looks the same as any other kind of encryption you might have seen. One of the benefits to that is that it helps to support the search in finding the encrypted information with the determinant. That way it allows for the search of the encryption to then change that, find something that matches it in order for that search to be satisfied. Now in the randomized, it's a little bit more strongly defended confidentiality. The words are just as they state in the title, randomized. The search engine cannot find that directly, and it is forced to choose based on a filter. So we've decided to use the determinant instead. You can see here the encryption key. Let me go back to the screen. Oh, wrong screen. I have the wrong name there. Pardon me. I'm clicking on the next one. You'll see. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and run that now. You can see that that's running. It's doing the encryption key while it searches and finds what it is in order to keep the privacy while we can. All right, let's see here. Let's look at the test. Okay, it's still showing the collection. It has not verified the encryption just yet. So we're going to try and see about getting that verified. So I unchecked all of these always encryption. I'm unchecking that. Always encrypted. And make a new connection here, or a new link. It seems as though it cannot link simultaneously. It looks like it's using the old one, so let's go ahead and do this. And you can see this is validated and verified from always encrypted. It already saw that it changed the connection. It'll let us know whether it's checked, that it shows whether it's encrypted or not. It's not visual to anyone when we check that. There's something else I need to demonstrate as well. Suppose I'm using always encrypted with the SN, excuse me. And the options here are query. When you look here at the level right above that, right underneath the last line, it says enable parameters, always encrypted. Go ahead and check that. Now understand, you must always check that. It's not an automatic feature, so you have to remember that you always have to check that. If it's unchecked, then it will get the wrong message and sent to read data. So you always have to remember to schedule to check that. Let me show you what that looks like. Uncheck here. I just had to do that.
Okay, so you see the errors I have mentioned. What is wrong with the plain text? Obviously, that's what I'm saying, but it's not really matching up, and so we can't do this always encrypted. Now, remember, you've got to check these options and the parameters. I'll think the chair like this. That's okay. No. Okay, we're going to try this again. Okay, here you see what's popped up, the errors. We still have the error message. We still have no always configure set up, so we want to release that and then connect it again. So here it works. So it works again, and also look at this. We need to be sure that always encrypted segments are there with the variables for selecting SSN. So what happened then next is don't use the randomized. here you see the errors pop up again. I'm thinking, why? Why did that happen? The reason why that happened was because we used always encrypted. And itself, we were hoping or expecting always encrypted will show up as an entire segment. But I have given this an obvious segment or a system of SQL is trying to keep it private, but instead we're going to go with always encrypted instead as a backup. For the background, for me, I wasn't aware of this, but it looked like we're using something clear, clarify. But always encrypted, there's always a background to it, something behind it. So we're using this variables. So if we have this application and there's so many different variables on it or screening on it, we're going to choose what we need and then manipulate it for a while until it can satisfy or limit the amount of encryption involved. Keep it very simple. We can do the active equality of this between the larger and the lesser, but it won't work that way. Always encrypted is always a even level. Okay, so from that point to now, I want to demonstrate what makes a DB database, setting it up, and I will show you, or I demonstrate this, and as we go back, how it can effectively work. So you're wondering how we're going to make this new accessibility link on the schedule. And I know I didn't say that right. What's a better word for that? Graph, okay. Mm-hmm. 54, 654. Okay. It's okay. No matter. We're going to try this again.
And now Baltimore is uniting. Al Sharpton went there, and Sharpton was heckled by some angry locals.
Okay, that's fine. We're going to use that for now. Okay, and so we're going to make another graph, a draft. So I chose this SQL server. And I'm going to make a new DSN, and we're going to use the file that we can see and connect the link. What did he spell? For always configure, we encrypted. We always support the STBC 13 or the 17, and we can't use the old director SQL server or the SQL. It won't work that way. We're going to use the new server database. We're going to use my circle connection. Okay, so we can connect to this. We don't have to use all the default as we set this up. There's nothing new. And you can see on this encryption, you can't use all of the default as it is set up. We don't have to include it all on always configured, so I mean encrypted. So we do the keyword is connecting, and so we're going to show demonstrate that to you now.
Speaking out about their living conditions
I know what that was.
City. It was posted onto YouTube just a few months ago, and it showed several citizens of Baltimore from Cummings district talking about how scary it was the city. Then, Democrat, anti-Trump Reverend Al Sharpton shows up, making an condemning Trump's criticism.
If you don't mind someone turning off the radio or put the mute on so that we don't hear that news. Okay, now I'm going to make another link with this graph. It'll be a different connection. Okay, now there's only one thing that's a little different. We need to check on the label, the columns here of encrypt, always encrypted. And if you check on that, they will have always encrypted available for me. And I don't know why it was called always encrypted. It's just something we came up with. Okay, we're still always encrypted. I'm thinking we did that because we opened up the same segment, and we're using the old initial connection. Yes, that's right. We're still using the connection. When we make a new file, we keep it separate. We still do this one again like this. Thank you. Okay, can you see the SS rate? Really nice. It's cleaned up, it's running, and we don't do any changes on it. It's always configured in this plain sentence. We're going to open this up and compare it, and I'll show you what it looks like. So you can see, always configure, you have this level coding and you add the key and the columns of encryption on the level. Use always encryption. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now let me do several tests here. And you can see what I insert into the new documentation. So you can see it was successful in inserting this new documentation, and I'm looking over at the SSMS. Yes, so we have the SSMS, and it's documented here. You can see both of them. We have accessibility key here. We have that one, and then so if we decide to use always encrypted, then we're going to disseminate it to other people. And in this situation, we're going to choose the Windows certification, or Azure. And we're going to hand that off to another person on that keyboard. And if they fail to do that, we don't have the certification. And then we need to make sure to export the certificate over to the other certificate, the other side, on their computer. And they'll put that into that other computer, and we can see the data is successful. So that's one negative on that for the always encrypted. And how can we disseminate these certifications to assure to each person using it? Or maybe we make a mistake and we give it to the wrong person. You have to be careful with that. It'll be a negative certificate. And then really we would like to see if we can use the key vault. It's got to work. And so we'll test it. And if it doesn't work, and if it's unsuccessful, go with SSMS, and it should work just fine with no problem. And then we will access. If we make errors on it, we'll have to see. For now, we're going to use it, always configure, and see if we can get the certification. Okay, now we're going to show you one more thing. I've already demonstrated how to put this into the database. Can you use the filter? And we'll see what happens.
Okay, now you can see what happened. There's an error message that has come up. Like I was explaining before with the SSMS, you have to use the parameters for each one of those. And some of the values or the quality values are not there. And we noticed that, and we're like, we have to continue doing a few more tests, and then those things may not work. But I suggest that we use the stored procedure. And that's the backup that we would be using, and that's inside of the filter configuration. That's encrypted. So we go into another column of that filter, and it should work. So let's test that. And you can find it under the other columns and under the non-encrypted columns as well. But, you know, some of the parameters are a little wavering, so we may have to go back and decide to use another encryption. So, and do a backup to that filtering system. And, you know, we all have, you know, the example of how we can use these different encryptions, and we also have the choices that we can appropriate for them as well. But it all just, you know, really depends on how we're looking at distributing that information and those certificates. So, but we can continue to evaluate and improve for the EBC driver and also solve, you know, those issues when they come up in order to improve for access for the EBC driver. But sometimes, you know, we can't access that one. But are there any questions about encryption before we continue? Okay, all right. So now I have an example of a few other things that's related to our work with our client, that our client decided to use Azure SQL. And, you know, really, I'm going to tell you, it's a pain in the ass, but, you know, it's just, it really depends on, you know, with the user and, you know, what the passwords look like and, you know, how the network is for that office and being under Windows 365. So, you know, 365 is incorporated with Azure AD. So, but all of those individuals have the access to 365 with their own certificates to access those. So they would sign in and do that, and they are able to do that in the ODBC, and it would be supported. So, and the thing that we would have to do is change those keywords in order to be connected into the Azure system as well. So, and it's not the local domain. So I'm going to show you an example of that.
This was our tutorial. Missed it.
So it's the same as what I've spoke about before. The function is the same, and it requires that BC17. So it does not support the 13. It is 17 and up. So the Azure integration is always being supported by Azure, with but not in the local domain. So Azure is integrating, is integrative. If you pick that integrative, then you do not have to write a sign-in at all. As you can see, it automatically opens the Microsoft. So, and then you can join it yourself. Okay, so I'll try to close this and open it again, and we'll see what happens. So, well, first let me end this. Okay, it went well. Okay, so now I've closed it. I'm going to open it back up and test and see how that goes. But I've also am going to get rid of all the cache. Yeah, so if I open it up and, it doesn't look exactly beautiful, but you can see the name that's there. So, and we can go ahead and fix that. So we'll change that locale. So it's also missing a piece of coding for that name. Hold on, I need to move this around. Okay, that's better. So it doesn't have my name on it. I will go ahead and insert my name, and then I'm going to delete the schedule that's currently there to do that. See if this work has been completed. As you can see, it is popping up for sign in, so I need to sign in currently. Now it is connected. And it's still missing some work. So let's check that coding again. Okay, yeah, that's what it is. So it removed my username, and now that's gone, and that's going to cause issues. So maybe, I could, back up this problem and maybe do a force change form. But, it can be a simple form in order to make a sign-in for me. So it shouldn't be opened. It's only testing. We really don't care what the query's doing. We're just going to force it to connect. All right, we'll try to test that, and also I'm going to save it before closing. I'll open the form first. I'm going to put in my email. Open that up and sign in. Disconnect it. Now we'll see about opening up the schedule. And it's not working. It's because I need to save the username and the password, and it's in there with the user, but it's not having that password. So I have a couple of choices that are available to me. So I can do a username and password, which means that every time I pull it up, I have to sign it in, or you can use your own form and modify that for the connection. So I'll demonstrate that for you. I made a new TSN. As you can see, the choices are there now, but on the third one, it requires the username and the password. So let's see how that works. So the username and the password's, not going to be the same because it's under this account. Maybe I should type that password again. That's strange. There's an error. Maybe we should check the SSMS. That's interesting. Okay, I don't know what the error is in my demonstration now, so, I mean, I know that this is, a con to having new technology, and having to learn everything, so there are going to be errors. So, but I'm going to use, my individual username, password, and, do the form, and whenever I done it myself, it worked on my own for Azure, but I used that for about 2 to 3 months. So, and we can try to use the interactive, but and try to finagle with that and go through all of it with that domain and sign. But it's really easier to change the old SQL than trying to replace it with the Azure password and username. Let's try this. Now we're going to close the access to the cache. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So we have a few other security dynamics that are happening. There's a row level security. So, and those two we could use to get in. So, and we could modify those and set those up and everything for the access, but I really don't have time to include that. So maybe in our next session, you may be interested in, seeing that and how, to set that up. So, in the coding. So, and I can provide you, another shared lecture for that, into that technology as well. So, and show you what's possible with that encryption. And also with the Azure Active Directory, I'm sorry. Okay, well, you guys have a great night, everyone.